Hello, Kelly.
Hi. I love that we're about to have this conversation.
Yes. Well, welcome to the What Not Why podcast because we did change the name since you were here last.
Mhm. Very exciting.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conversation on group and team. We're starting a new cohort in October, which is filling up quickly and really taking advantage of this iterative process of developing a course like this. We started our pilot in May of this year. It
Mm.
was part of my capstone for Harvard, and I got to really dig into the material, even bring in some AI components, which was kind of fun to add to the material.
Yeah.
And having put, what was it, 50 people, maybe
Yeah.
something, plus or
Yeah.
minus 50 people in that first group was really fun and insightful because we got great feedback. So now we're taking that feedback, we're improving the model and the delivery, listening to what people were wanting more of, which is most of what we got. The feedback was love it and more.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're looking for ways to weave in more practice time, more demos, and more opportunities for drills. So we thought we would have this, part two podcast. We did another one, I guess it was last summer.
Spring. Yep.
Yeah. And so and the timing is perfect because you're fresh off of a weekend team coaching adventure in the Yukon, no no less.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We hit the most, like the whole weekend was just amazing. We had, I think, what is probably the last bit of that really perfect fall up there. The colors were all changing. It was really warm. It was
Oh,
clear
nice.
sky, fog in the valley in the morning. So just the opportunity to be up there was amazing timing that way. And then a really incredible team. Team members from all over the world, um,
Oh, wow.
from Japan, the Ukraine, from Canada, from India. And we were talking about communication and conflict. And what I love about this team and the CEO in particular is that she always has her eye on what we can be doing to really create resilience within the team and get ahead of any conflict, to get ahead of making the team feel like they can communicate well in a safe environment because they do have some pretty high pressure um, events that they have throughout the year where they go from just sort of a normal, working status into really high pressure for a few weeks at a time. And so that was our work. It was really interesting.
Well, I'm really, looking forward to weaving that into our conversation today because I know that and I've also had the experience that when you're on a team, there are often high pressure moments.
Yep.
Whether it's high pressure conflict in some kind of a dynamic of the team or high pressure in like performance driven,
Mhm.
deadlines or, execution on projects. The two I feel are quite similar in our human response to
Yeah.
those high pressure moments. So we can talk about what the opportunity is in becoming skilled as a team or group coach. We're going to talk about the difference. We'll just remind people about the difference because I know it can get a bit confusing at times. So why don't we start there? Why don't we talk about the difference between team and group?
Yeah. And I love that we're going to get into eventually like what is that body response to that kind of pressure? How can we become aware of it? How can we manage it? I think that's
Yeah.
such a helpful conversation for people who don't have the information that we have. Um, but as far as team and group goes, so this last weekend I was working with a team. And this team all worked for one organization and they're all serving one mission. It was a senior leadership team they're all working towards the execution of the organization's mission. Would you add anything there to what a team is?
Yeah, interconnected system that relies on each other. This is an important distinction because group coaching are we're assuming they're individuals who are independent from each other, not interdependent on each other. So my achieving my goal is not dependent on anything that you have to do or contribute, right? I'm
Yeah.
there to learn from you in a group coaching session. I'm there to evoke awareness, to connect with people who are like minded, to have the energy of community and connection and belonging as I move toward my goal. But I'm not relying on the people in the group to execute on what I want. Whereas a team is interdependent. A team looks to each other to move things forward. I often think of it as like this wave that moves forward together. And when we think about that and human relations and emotions and our physical and emotional responses to I want to say conflict, but just even triggers,
Mhm.
activators that may create tension in groups. And it's an opportunity to become skilled at first self regulating and then also bringing self regulation to the group as a team leader, a team coach, right?
Mm.
So the team and group coach learns those important skills of self regulation, of bringing that energy into the group and modeling that for the group. So not
Yeah.
only talking about it and setting the stage for it, but modeling it, which I think is that next step of learning that we don't often talk about enough.
Mhm.
Where and I mean, I don't know about you, but I've experienced this in our courses where I will be teaching a class and we'll be like in week 13 or 14, and a student will go, "Oh, so you're modeling all this, aren't you,
Right.
Natalie?"
Right.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's what we're
Mhm.
doing."
Mhm.
And it clicks at one point that, "Oh, we're not just talking about it, you're actually showing us as you're facilitating." And
Yeah.
that's what we're doing when any team or group coach takes a contract or an initiative to do that work. Your first opportunity is to model that, self-regulation.
Yes, that self-regulation for sure, that ability just to become very present. I always remember the 3 articles that we have at one point in our leadership classroom. There's compassion, compassion, humility, and listening
Mm,
as, like, primary
mhm,
skills,
mhm,
and
mhm.
really stepping into that and becoming very present. And then just I think the modeling of curiosity in groups or teams is so powerful. It really is just our model is a real invitation for them to slow down as well. Instead of react, respond, even in the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, and what I have noticed when we talk about curiosity. So language is interesting. We use language over and over again and we sort of become desensitized to what we're actually saying.
Mhm.
So when I say to, teams like lead with curiosity, often the assumption is that people know what that looks like in
Mm.
action. But when they do it, and then I go, okay, and it's an opportunity to mentor and to say, well, flip that question into a what question, assuming that you don't have the answer. Because most people will start with a closed ended question that has an assumption of information in it
Yeah.
that isn't really curious. It's actually advice in disguise
Yeah.
as a question. So, creating awareness first on what is curiosity? What does it sound like? What does it look like? How does
Mm.
it feel to receive curiosity from someone? And then showing them how to apply that. Because, I mean, 9 on 10 people will say, lead with a do you, have you, could you, would you, are you, which is
Yeah.
closed. and then information that follows, which is leading, advising, consulting,
Yeah.
and assuming.
Yeah.
So the first step is really teasing apart language and impact. How do we differentiate between what we're saying and what we're doing and then bring it together to align,
Yeah.
right? So language is always so fascinating. And that also touches on another topic, which I think is important, is that the different modalities that come to group and team coaching. When you want to be a team and group coach, you're not just a coach,
Hmm.
which is different than one-on-one engagements. One-on-one engagements, you can stay in the coaching lane, as I like to say.
Yeah.
But in group or team opportunities, you have different lanes. You've got the coach lane, the mentor lane, the facilitator lane, the team builder lane.
Yeah.
So what can you say about the practical, like when I tell you these lanes and you go, okay, great, what does that mean? What does it look like?
Yeah.
Can you take us through your weekend on how that would have shown up?
Yeah. Yes. And what I will say too is the ICF team competencies,
Mm,
you can go and just download them from their
yeah,
website.
yeah.
Their first introduction is saying a lot of what Natalie is saying right now, is that one-on-one coaching, we stay in coach position. Team coaching, group coaching, we're moving in and out of facilitator, teacher, handing it back, giving them things to do, asking really good questions. And then the competencies themselves actually are, I feel like they're a roadmap. I feel like if you can really understand those competencies, which really reflect the one-on-one competencies, then you have a pretty good idea of what you can do when you step into that room. It's gonna
Mm-hmm.
like we can really lean into those. So my time in the Yukon, I had the team for Saturday night from 6 till 9 o'clock, and then I had them Sunday all day.
Mm,
Um,
wow.
yeah, it was really something, and a lot of them stayed up and, like, were in the hot tub until, like, 2 in the morning because there were incredible northern lights, which I missed
Oh, wow.
because I went to bed, of course.
Oh. Oh.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, so there's a couple of things here, because what I also wanna talk about, what this is bringing up for me, Natalie, is also the perform framework and how we can use perform with groups and teams. But I mean,
Mm,
for your primary question there, which is like, what does it look like when you're stepping in and out of those roles? And so for me, when I'm working with a team or a group, I will create those group agreements. We might do some appreciative inquiry. We warm up the room. With this particular group, there were a lot of artists. And so
mhm,
we did a dance session that was led by one of the artists to just warm people up physically and then warm them up um, emotionally and mentally through agreements
mhm,
and appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry in this case looked like, tell me something that one of your colleagues did in this last few weeks that you're really proud of. And so they were able to all appreciate one another right there in the circle as we started the day.
right, and I would categorize that as facilitation in the beginning. You're facilitating agreements, right?
Right. 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 And then, so we have agreements, we have that good rapport, and now we're moving into, okay, what are we doing here today?
Mm,
And I am going to say, here's what we're doing today. Maybe the CEO might come and say, this is what we're doing today. And then we're flipping it back to the team, knowing that, what do you really want to get out of our time? So you're walking out of here at the end of the day. What do you want to walk away with?
well, and also, as as we mentioned, the team objective is a unified objective. Everyone is moving toward the same. So clarifying outcomes from the group or team level
Yeah.
to the individual level is, I think, another aspect that we also want to talk about, because the team exists as an entity, but the
Hmm.
individuals on the team each have objectives that they need to move toward to contribute to the team objective, the overall unifying goal. And that's where you're coaching. This is where you step into coach role, asking the good questions and giving the team the responsibility and ownership to clarify for themselves what they're doing.
That's right, and as you're saying, we're leaning into their wisdom. We're
Mm,
leaning into they are the experts in their work. They need to craft and create this, and so they feel aligned and authentic to it.
yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the objective for the team today. We're gonna talk about what they individually want in that will help, feed up into this main objective. And so there's gonna be a little bit of facilitation, and then I'm gonna ask some really good coaching questions,
Yeah.
and they can go away and they can journal, or they can talk about it in breakouts and then come back and debrief. And so everybody can see each point of view and how it leads up to this space.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so just to clarify some language too, like lean in, we say that a lot in coaching. And
Mm,
somebody said to me the other day, when you say lean in, like what are you actually saying? And I thought, you know what, that's a really good question. So when we say lean in, it's about digging deeper with questions and curiosity, getting curious about language, checking for meaning, clarifying statements, right? Observations, reflecting back, energy, tone, body language. That is the work of the coach, right? It's not to serve something to the team, it's to dig deeper to get what the team, like you said, the wisdom of the team to
yeah,
rise.
yeah,
And so when we say lean in, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about using these skills to really cultivate the knowledge that exists on the team.
yeah. It's really exciting. Like it's very it's fascinating.
It's freeing too as a coach. In the coach lane, you're responsible for being very present to the team
Mhm.
and what's happening.
Yeah.
And but not just present, you're also involved. Like and what I mean by that is presence is great. You know, you're there for the team. But when I say involved, I mean you are jumping in with your questions, your observations, you're really um I guess you're the orchestra. You're the conductor of the orchestra, right? You're really teasing out all of the different tunes and the different, talents of that team. So one of the important things as well of teamwork is everyone has a voice.
Yeah.
And that's the coach's role to ensure that everybody speaks. After they come back from breakouts or exercises, as you mentioned, which I should think is a great team dynamic to bring in, you're making sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak, which leaders often overlook
Yeah.
because team dynamics are what they are and roles start to develop on teams. And
Mhm.
some people talk more than others, and that starts to develop norms,
Yeah.
right? Team norms that become accepted and familiar and no one's challenging. But that means that some people get pushed to to the wallflowers,
Yep.
and they don't get a chance to voice what's on their minds. And, that the opinion of every person, not just the opinion, but also the understanding of everyone,
Yeah.
knowing that everybody's on the same page, what Brene Brown calls painting done, that we all have the same picture in mind of what, success looks like. You can only know that if you're asking every single member on the team
Right.
to tell you what does it look like when success happens here for this
Yeah.
project.
And like you say in individual coaching, when we're holding that position, the team is getting smarter in front of us.
Mhm.
Is seeing new opinion, new perspective. They're really being able to listen to each other in that container, and they are learning in the moment.
Yeah. And when you're modeling bringing all the voices in,
Mhm.
you're also evoking awareness because you're modeling humility. You're modeling inclusion. You're modeling curiosity. Like
Mhm.
there's so many good things that you're bringing in when you are the coach who is there responsible for bringing all of the voices to the table. And that's one of those opportunities that where modeling is actually quite significant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So where would you bring in something like team? So we've started with facilitation, we moved into coach. Now what about team building? So we talked about, breakouts to me are part of coaching when they're inquiry based. So what would a team building exercise look like?
One of the things that I did up there was, they had an art background, but I would ask this of anyone actually. And this was really starting to evoke awareness for the team. We were talking about conflict, and what conflict is for each person
Mm,
and
mm-hmm.
how it feels, what it sounds
Mm,
like, like what happens within their body, what
yeah.
emotions are present. Because what we really wanted, or what I really wanted to land, is for some people conflict is actually incredibly energizing. And it feels good. It feels like we're really getting things done. And for other at the other end, it feels scary. It feels like shut down. It feels like I want to, the two different points. And on this team, we have both. We have both. So to create awareness on the team of what conflict was, we had some conversation, we had some journaling and writing. And then I got people to go out and create any art they wanted that described, they had to hold the question, what is conflict for me? And then they went and created art, either in the forest or with some of the art supplies we had around. They could dance if they wanted, they could hold pose if they wanted. And so that was the exercise. I gave them 20 minutes, 30 minutes to do that, and then they came back and presented. And so we could really see from that different artistic perspective what it meant for everyone.
Mm.
Able to, and it was hilarious, actually. One of the girls had put a whole bunch of garbage on her poster. She had, like, taped a whole bunch of garbage, and in the middle, she had a tea bag, and she was like, "And there's always some tea that goes on when there's conflict," as in there's always good gossip that goes on.
Oh, okay.
So they were able to see each other in a different way. So you asked, sorry, what was your question? I lost it. What
Just
part
like
was
what would it so you talked about so I think what you're describing is a team building exercise that
yeah,
is, focused on describing how a person's identity in a conflict, like
yeah,
how everybody can have, and i- it's a good, again, this is what I love about coaching. It's just creating awareness, so much awareness on the assumptions that we make so
mm,
often
yeah,
in especially in team and group, because we have so many different balls that we're juggling, right? We
yeah,
have the performance objectives, we have the deadlines, we have the relationships. If we think team dynamics, there are so many dynamics at play, right? We've
yeah,
got the relationship dynamic, the task dynamic, the systemic dynamic, the developmental dynamic, and the dialogue dynamic. And it's multifaceted and complex. So distilling conflict is one small way that we can start to evoke awareness on a team to the differences that exist. Because differences are not just um, demographic, right? They're how we respond in certain situations. So you described a team building exercise, I think, where you have them explore what's their relationship with conflict.
right. And then share it
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
so they can see one another. And now those pieces are actually artifacts, and they have them at their desks at work. And so if
Yeah.
I'm going to come and talk to you, first I'm going to look at your poster and I'm going to say, "Oh yeah, I remember.
Oh
This is
yeah.
what it is for this
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
This is how they can move out of conflict." Okay, good. I have that. And now we can have this hard conversation with just that baseline understanding. So I think anytime we allow or create space for people just to step outside of their boxes of your Natalie and your Kelly and at work,
Yeah.
and say, who are you?
Yeah.
And then ask some really good coaching questions for them to ask each other or for them to sit with. That is amazing team building. when they see each other
Yeah.
in fuller humanity.
Yeah, and I think that the common the foundation to a really powerful team building exercise is that element of curiosity, that
Mhm.
we bring in curiosity. Like, I'm thinking of the most powerful team building exercises I've done have always evoked this curiosity about others in the room in a way that no one was ever curious before,
Yeah.
because we had a job to do.
Yeah.
We weren't there. So it really does help people get to know each other better.
Mhm.
And that is really part of the forming, aspects of team.
Right.
When we put people together, we have to assume that there is, like, instead of assuming that, oh, everything's going to be fine, which is actually the default
Right.
position that we take, right?
Which makes it really doesn't make sense, and it's been
No.
proven over and over and over and over and over throughout generations of people working together that that is a very tricky thing to bring humans together without any agreements and just hope that it all goes well. Because
Yeah.
they're all smart, they're all motivated, they all wanna get this thing done. The power of agreements, which you and I talked about in our last, podcast,
Mhm.
talk about in
Mhm.
the power of agreements of how we're gonna show up here. What is okay and what is not okay, can't be overspoken, I think. I think it really is
Yeah.
the
And that brings me to the distinction between what we often hear the term psychological safety.
Mhm,
So safety being the operative word, and brave. So the difference between a safe space and a brave space.
mhm,
And um, I really love the distinction, because a brave space is where I think teams need to strive to be,
yeah,
and safe, but safety is the foundation of brave, right?
mhm,
When a team feels safe, they will take more risks. They will voice their opinions more, they will challenge, they will bring in off the wall ideas without worry that they're going to be disrespected or, looked upon as not valuable or whatever.
yeah,
They are willing to challenge the norms
yeah,
of the conversation or the status quo. And that is where innovation happens. That is where the greatest companies, in fact, I remember the Aristotle study on the Google team. Like, they were looking at their internal team dynamics, and they were saying, which ones of our teams are working at the highest level of efficiency and performance and connection and collaboration. And every time, it was the teams that were demonstrating a high degree of psychological safety,
yeah,
because therefore they could be brave spaces for
yeah,
risk taking, for innovating, for bringing new ideas to the table. And yeah, I was talking to one of our leaders in our program, actually, and he just, this man is so impressive. He knows how impressed I am about him. I don't need to name him, but he said to me, even in the most high stake situations where you have, a decision could derail an entire economy, let's say,
yeah,
because that's how high level this person is in his industry. um he said, you can always create a space for people to take risks when or they know that you have their back. You put systems in place to manage the risk,
mhm,
to, if this goes wrong, then this happens.
mhm,
And that's what he called having his team's back. So putting things in place to then allow them to get creative,
yeah,
to take chances and to try new things. And if failure happened, which it did, there was
mm,
always a fallback plan to adjust. And that is the practical way to create. Because, I mean, there are teams, everybody, organizations depend on teams to perform.
Yep.
and to, you know, smarter, faster, better is the motto, right? To stay ahead of the competition. We all get that reality. So some people say, well, coaching is too soft, you know, allowing everybody to fail and then learn from failure. And we understand that, you know, teams need to perform.
Yep.
The way to
Mhm.
allow them to innovate and perform is to have those
Right.
you know, those fallback plans in place.
That's right. That's right. I just so agree. Fear in command and control is going to get you success in the short term,
Mm,
but it is impossible to have long-term success when you
mhm,
a team in fear.
mhm,
People can't sustain that or like whatever fear is, high nervous system states. And so what you're speaking to for me is the power of long-term relationships with coaches on teams.
mhm,
So and whether the coach is an internal coach or whether the coach is coming in from external to work with the team, um, team coaches can ask the uncomfortable questions. They can emerge the data within the team that's the underlying current that is keeping people unsafe, that is keeping that feeling of nervous system. We are positioned really well to tune in that really strong presence, to tune in to the undercurrents in the room, to each person. I mean, it takes a lot of energy for us. A day of coaching with a team can be very exhausting because we don't just have our eyes on one person, we have our eye on every person in the room and their collective energy and the system's energy.
mhm.
And so with that real presence that we have, then we can ask the questions that need to be asked in the room. So the team can sort through whatever is standing in the way of exactly what you're talking about. That ability to be innovative and creative and bring all the potential answers in safety without getting shut down, without people ridiculing, without people dismissing.
Yeah, and that is, you know, a growth mindset in action,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like we
Mhm.
talk about this fixed versus growth mindset. A fixed mindset is very caught up in status quo, caught up in, you know, the let's not push boundaries and stay safe. But I mean, do we know any great companies that have grown staying safe?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And so what what companies truly want in their best interest is to create the bravest space possible. And I think that the very first place to do that is to address, like you said, conflict or trust issues
Mhm.
in teams to be able to build that collaboration, that interdependence, and to allow teams to rely on that
Yeah.
system, right?
You know what is just occurring to me right now is like when a team gets there to that um state of rigidity where this is how this is done around here
Mhm.
and innovation, that's where innovation sort of goes to die. That rigidity actually is a very perilous place to be. And often teams will eventually they'll fall into chaos. The structure itself will start to burn down.
Mhm.
Um, is actually a sign that things may have been very successful in the past. What it's worked to get you here. But how can you soften? How can you, and I know that we don't love that word, how can innovation still be really relevant with that psychological safety, with that space of bravery and creation when we think about all the structures, all the processes, all the ways of communicating still need to grow. They still need to adapt to what's happening in the environment and who's in the room now.
Mm.
And again, coaches uniquely can help teams um, to step into those brave spaces.
Hmm. Yeah. And we've said it, I think we said it a lot in the first podcast, and we've said it again today. The agreements, the team charter, the behaviors that we expect, the
Mhm.
norms that we want to set for respect and for
Yeah.
open-minded approaches and for curiosity and for, all of the things that allow brave spaces to emerge.
Yeah.
It's not by assuming that the space is brave, that assuming everyone knows the space is brave, that isn't going to work. It has to be an action. It has to be a verb. The brave space is a verb. It's not an adjective, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We had with another team that I was working with just a few weeks, maybe a month ago. One of the team agreements was respect. And what does respect mean?
Mhm.
We had to dig in and really get into that word. It's the same with words like trust.
Mhm.
How do we define trust on this team? And what are the
Mhm.
behaviors? What does it actually look like? Which
Yeah.
is moving into team charters. Yeah.
Yeah, the charters are created to facilitate, I think, the critical conversations that teams are going to engage in that require that brave uh space that we're talking about. Um, it also is meant to address what behaviors are expected when we do hit a wall, when we enter into struggle.
Right.
How do we show up to that struggle? Those agreements are there to govern those struggles and the conflict and the places where teams can sometimes derail. And that's what makes them so important, because they're used as a tool. They're not just a nice to have charter at the beginning of a session. They're
Right.
brought in every single time. Well, first of all, every time you meet, reminded, what do you want to add? What do you want to subtract? What do we want to, keep?
Yep.
And then also this idea of using it as a tool throughout your conversations for opportunities where there is a conflict. And a lot of I've seen a lot of teams, say, well, let's take that conflict outside of the team and address it externally. I think that's like the worst thing you can do to
Mhm.
creating a brave space. If you
Mhm.
can't address conflict within the group itself,
Mhm.
and I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, I just want to say, but most, like, okay, this brings me to what we talked about before we started, which is the thing that both of us have heard comes up the most when we do this work is when we train coaches to do team and group coaching,
Yeah.
is that they are so afraid of conflict arising and then having to handle it or facilitate it or, mediate it in a group or team session. And that is, I think, the heart of a skilled team or group coach, is showing up to that in a way that is, again, very self-regulated, has to be, because you
Yeah.
can't get tied into the conflict. You have to be the objective sort of mediator observer. Um, and yeah, so can you talk about, like, what are you noticing around the well, yeah.
Yeah. Can I take it from there?
Yeah.
Yes, I can take it from
I
there.
lost my train of thought, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to go in 4 minutes because I have
Okay.
a client. Um, I I think what you said, first of all, that is the fundamental. That is the
Mm,
absolute fundamental is how can we stay very present and very centered and very emotionally regulated in the undercurrent, or maybe it's very clear the conflict that's going on in the room. And how do we model, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, how do we model listening, like real listening,
mhm,
curiosity, generous curiosity, like kind curiosity, and compassion? How do we model that when the conflict is happening in the room? And so we can at least try to keep people's nervous systems down. Um, and I think it's inevitable that if we do this for long enough, we're going to run into situations where people have high emotions because they are, this is their life. This is where they spend 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day working on these projects that are important to them, or, the mission that is really important to them. So now we've set up this tool of agreements and charter. So that's one of our tools that we can go back to. And we can also just recognize it and call it what it is. Clear is kind. I think Brene Brown, that is one thing that I go back to again and again and again with teams, or even in, when we're teaching. Clear is kind. And so everyone, may I make an observation? Here's what I'm noticing in the room. And then asking a good coaching question and really doing what coaches do best,
Mhm.
giving and giving it back to the
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
Um, which which means we have to have a lot of faith in they have the capacity to solve this. They are whole and complete. They are the expert in their lives. And it might be that this is one of the best reasons why coaches have longer term relationships. Maybe at that time we need to step into either facilitation or conflict management or teaching,
Mhm.
because we're providing more skills for that team right there in that moment that we're going to check in on in 2 weeks when we meet with them again, or a week, whatever the timeline is. We're going to check in on that again to build up their competency to deal with those moments with more equanimity.
Mhm. Well, and you were talking about now you're bringing in the feedback loop, which again is a really big advantage of a group or team coaching initiative. But since we don't have time for that, so maybe that's a good place to start next time we meet. The important feedback loops. But thanks for your time today, Kelly.